Get ready
for the most electrifying podcast,
Gente Talk. Hosted by husband and wife duo
Jorge La Voz
and Dr. Lani.
With over 8 billion people on this planet,
we aim to capture the stories changing the world,
experience intriguing pláticas,
laughter,
and interactive challenges that will captivate everyone,
including your abuelita.
Stay tuned, gente.
This is going to be a ride you won't want to miss. Felicia Fe Montes is a Xicana Indigenous holistic artivist, designer, poet, professor, public scholar, and practitioner of the healing arts from East Los Angeles.
She is the co-founder and director of Mujeres de Maíz in Lak Ech, Botánica del Barrio, and El Mercado y Más, as well as assistant professor in Chicanx, Latinx arts, and social practice at Cal State University, Long Beach.
She is published in books Fleshing the Spirit, Voices from the Ancestors, and Mexicana Fashions, and is the co-editor of the book Mujeres de Maíz en Movimiento, Spiritual Artivism, Healing Justice, and Feminist Praxis.
As a speaker, performer, and workshop facilitator, she has engaged with numerous campuses and community spaces.
She is recognized throughout the Southwest as a leading Chicana cultural worker of her generation, involved in transnational art and organizing efforts, including work with the Zapatistas, Peace and Dignity Journeys, and La Red Xicana Indigenous.
Hola amigos, ¿cómo están? Aquí su servidor Jorge La Voz.
And Dr. Lani.
Y bienvenidos nuevamente a nuestro show de Gente Talk. Woo-hoo! Estamos muy emocionados. We want to thank you once again for tuning in y queremos dejarles saber que este podcast se hace en inglés y en español. So it's a bilingual or a Spanglish podcast as we'd like to call it, right?
Right.
We have a very special guest today, and we want to thank you for going to YouTube and Spotify and supporting our podcast and viewing already the past talent that we've had, and we're going to continue to bring more stories. But today we have a very special guest. Dr. Lani, would you like to introduce our guest today?
Yes, so I'm so excited to have a fellow colega, organizer, amazing, powerful mujer. I mean, I couldn't even be more excited, and I thought, we got to get her on a show. We definitely do. So we'd like to introduce Felicia Montes. Woo!
All right.
Thank you so much.
Felicia, bienvenida.
Yes.
Welcome.
Gracias. Thank you so much for having me. Muy amable.
And why don't you begin by telling us who little Felicia was growing up?
So little Felicia, I would go by Ficha. My family knew me as Ficha. But even before that, I was born actually under a different name. And a lot of that is my parents' involvement in the Chicano movement of the 1960s and 70s. So
right, you come from a legacy.
I do. I come from Brown Beret and La Vida Nueva and Chicano movement parents here in the 60s and 70s in East Los Angeles. Garfield and Roosevelt graduates, and also East LA College.
And rivals too, right?
Exactly. Exactly. They were rivals. They met at ELAC or East LA College, and in the organizing and the activism. So when you say like, who was little Felicia, I think of me growing up at protests, at fundraisers for concerts, for political prisoners. I was at meetings, under the tables, trying to take pictures or doing things or figuring out things, having my life and learning about my community and who I was through my family's work in the Chicano movement. So that's how I remember a lot of my childhood in the movement. And so I would say I was, my name is Felicia, right? So Feliz, ya, like happy. And so I feel like I was happy in those areas, and also eventually where I was able to find my own path different from that. Connected and grounded in that, but different.
Welcome to Excellence Real Estate, where every corner holds the promise of home. At Excellence Real Estate, they're not just selling houses, they're opening doors to your future. From cozy starter homes to spacious family retreats, they can help you find your new home. Let excellence lead you home. Contact them today, because when it comes to finding your perfect fit, excellence is the only option. As you were growing up, and you said with your parents and the influence that they had, because it's very rare for, I guess, a child to get into that type of activism that you were in. So how did it impact you, I guess, in the later years?
Yeah, I think for myself, a lot of people say that in the 60s and 70s was very much about identity and human rights. And so for myself, every teenager is figuring out who they are. Mm-hmm. So I knew who I was culturally and identity, and I had a really big base in that. But of course, I still had the rebel parts of like trying to find who I was as Felicia. Maybe not as Ficha, and as other names, but who I was. And so I was very much into alternative, like rebel community spaces. They call them subcultures, but really alternative cultures, right? I was like into punk and ska, had a band at 16 and had a show in my backyard, like those type of things where connecting with lots of different circles and communities, which is similar to what I still do now, right? Like I was in AP classes, but I was going to raves and parties.
You just aged and dated yourself. Raves and parties.
They're all back now, though. All of those things are back. But all those communities, so I was very different circles, even in high school, right? Like this will date me though, with the cha-cha and like the crew and all that. But I was in all those spaces and could easily move in and out of them with ease. And I feel like that's still who I am today in a lot of the community spaces, very similar to yourself, Dr. Lani, in terms of, artist, but also educator and moving into different spaces. What we say is like a multidimensional woman, but also many people at one point said, like, you do many things, like, or it's too many things, almost in a negative way. And I read and connected somewhere about learning about our indigenous communities. And back in the days, right, all of us had to know about plantas, or our worldviews were connected. The art wasn't just for art's sake. It was art honoring or asking for the water to plant the herbs or the food, right? Everything was connected in worldviews, the art, the music, the spirituality. And so when I bring all those things, I now honor that. Like I'm connecting back to perhaps my bisabuela's ways, no? Connecting back to esa tradición, ese conocimiento ancestral. And so for me, I take pride in all those ways. One day I might be dancing at the swap meet or at a paisa baile and, researching that also, which is, I want to write a book about that and connect, but also the next day maybe doing a workshop on wellness or in the classroom, in the college classroom, trying to bring all those things together. And I think that's what's best too, because I bring all those things also to the college classroom.
I love it. We're going to get a little bit more from you about your activista work right after a word from our sponsor.
Quiero decirle a todos los que nos están viendo y escuchando que este podcast es muy diferente a los podcasts tradicionales, ¿verdad? Because everybody, when they have their own podcast, there's different types of things that we can talk about. Pero lo importante para nosotros cuando hicimos este podcast es invitar a personas, como podemos decir, ordinarias, pero que son extraordinarias in their field, their creativity. And I'm glad that we have someone like you today to share exactly, your story, because these are some of the stories that people need to hear, and people sometimes they've never heard, but they need to connect. Tenemos una conexión y un deber con la comunidad. Así que vamos a escuchar un poquito más.
Yeah, so we go back because we've actually worked together. We've done events together, so I've had that honor and privilege to work with you. But I've never really asked that question of like, how did you first get into, your artivista work, right? You consider yourself an artivista. How did you get into that artivism work? Mujeres de Maíz, I know, is a huge powerhouse as well, and a center for a lot of mujeres and work in that way. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about like what propelled you into that direction.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, coming from movement background and Xicana movement background and talking about ethnic studies, about empowerment, I lived that, I believed that, but I also was learning about that in school and in my undergrad. I had lived it, but I was learning more of the history and specifics in education and in books and in classes. For me, it was also about how could I do something a little bit different from my familia. Entonces era arte, ¿no? Yo podía hacer una poema o compartir una poema. I could share a poem, a song, a hip hop piece, or ask others to do a dance or a visual art piece, and people could learn from it. They could be educated, they could feel empowered, and they could even transform themselves or their communities. And so art or artivism really became that vehicle. It started with the group of just a few of us, just like today, sharing a little bit of poetry, sharing that palabra, and then seeing each other like, wow, I've never heard somebody say like palabra or say a word or do Spanglish poems, you know, like, is that even possible? And when we did that, something changed inside of us. We almost say like our DNA changed. Algo cambió, no? And we just kept doing it, and we kept getting asked and asked to perform and share. And it's now 27 plus years later that in Lak Ech, which is the seed of Mujeres de Maíz, we saw that we could do something. We saw people needed it, and we started Mujeres de Maíz, which we just called friends. You do folklorico? Don't you sing? Weren't you in a punk band in high school? You do mariachi? You sing? And why don't we do a mix? Can we do like a punk mariachi or whatever it was? And we just kept doing events, and we did zines, self-published magazines. And we just kept doing events, whatever we needed to do. And we're still doing that 27 plus years later. And now those zines, those best of zines are in a book. The stories, esos conocimientos, pero también de historias de la gente, de las mujeres, aquí están en el libro Mujeres de Maíz. It is mainly in English, a little bit of Spanglish, and also some Nahuatl and other indigenous languages, and it talks about spiritual artivism, which is what we do, feminist practice, and also healing justice.
Tell us a little bit about the importance of including indigeneity in there. We talk about indigenous words, practices, culture, like rich rituales. How important was that to be a part of this book?
You know, I think it's super important for a lot of different reasons. Many of us, especially in schools or community ways, are learning about our communities, learning about our family history, her story, our story. And oftentimes in my classes, we find out like, oh, my tía speaks Nahuatl, or yo soy Setal, or yo soy de una comunidad zapoteca, or some already come with that knowledge, and some are reconnecting generations. We might have first generation communities or students in our classes and others. And so for this book, it's really important to validate and honor the communities wherever people are coming from, indigenous nations and tribes from across the world. And honor them, but also honor the political and human rights actions that they're all taking across the world. So from the United Nations to down the street, the communities that are speaking that. So we often offer that through art and song. As you can see here, there's this image that Margaret Alarcón did of myself probably in 1999, and we have the palabra or the word image here. And so learning about the corn, learning about traditions, and Mujeres de Maíz.
Excellent. More with Felicia when we come back from this break.
Work it, make it, do it, makes us harder, better, faster, stronger. More than power, never, ever, after work is over. Harder, better, faster, stronger. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, makes us stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work is never over. Work it harder, make it better, do it faster, makes us stronger. More than ever, hour after hour, work is never over.
What I would like to know, Faye, is Mujeres de Maíz, right? The title is very catchy. But why don't you explain to us how you guys came up with that name?
Yeah, definitely. So Mujeres de Maíz means women of the corn in Spanish. And for us, it meant a lot of different things. It meant that women came in different colors, different sizes, came from different parts of the world. We had a little bit of a hard time getting to the name Mujeres de Maíz, but when Lilia Ramirez, a visual artist and activist in the community of East LA, said it, we all kind of were like, oh, that's it. That's it. And in the room at our first meetings were a Sri Lankan woman, a Filipina sister, African American sisters, as well as communities of Chicana, Latinx, and others representing LA. But they still were like, it connects with us because it means so much. It comes from indigenous ways. It's something that sustains our community and is very, very sacred, which is corn. And just like women, is sacred and sustains and is a really important part of our communities and of our heritage.
I love it. I love it. Where can we get the book?
Yeah, so the book is available at all your local community spaces as well as online. It is done through the University of Arizona Press, which we're a great press to work with. It is an anthology, so it has over 40 contributors, ranging from visual artists, experienced academic essays, as well as testimonies. That was really important for us to have testimonios. What did the gente and the Mujeres de Maíz experience from 27 years ago or last year, right? What were their experiences, thoughts of sharing their first poem on stage? All those things are within this book. So it's an academic book, but it's also an art book. It has beautiful art images inside, as well as poems and much more.
I had a question because we had Luis Rodriguez here with Tia Chuchas, right? Is that one of the books that maybe is available at his bookstore?
Probably.
It is. It is available at Tia Chuchas. He has long been an inspiration to us and to the organizing Tia Chuchas Centro Cultural, as well as Tia Chuchas Press. And we had an event there recently, and also a canto circle where we shared some songs. It was on the full moon, which we've done full moon circles for over a decade as Mujeres de Maíz. So it was all that was happening on one day, and so we really had a good time at Tia Chuchas, and it is available at the Centro Cultural.
Everybody comes together and somehow we all have something in common, right? What is the one commonality that you think that you see?
Yeah, I think for us it was empowerment for our people, empowerment for women, empowerment for our families. Even though at the time we were women-centered, we've always also connected with queer and trans and gender non-conforming and non-binary communities, and we were able to support. It was a support system. So no matter what, we met empowerment and education, and that sisterhood and community space has been there.
I thought we could talk a little bit about your scholarly work. Share a little bit about that.
For myself, a lot of my research interests include Xicana feminism, poetry, which I perform and do poetry and hip hop, as well as Xicana feminism, Xicana spirituality, indigeneity in different ways, Xicana indigenous communities, but also music. So I've taught music classes and public health courses.
Wait, you also have a single.
Yes.
Is it a few singles, or is it one single, a couple singles?
Well,
you know we're going to show that, right? We're going to show you doing your single. We're going to roll that footage while we're talking about it.
So I have a music video that a friend did. I was part of a crew, hip-hop crew from Boyle Heights in East LA. And so, yeah, the music, the artivist, all of it for me was connecting the same consciousness, the same empowerment of women, art, indigenous traditions and connections, whether it was through hip-hop, song, drumming, visual art, or dance. And so I am also in danza, in danza Azteca tradition and other indigenous traditions. I do spiritual dancing and traditions. And so for me, all that connects in a braid, right? Connects in a beautiful way.
Oh, that's awesome. So we want to get more into that. I think we're going to have a little showcase, right?
Yes.
But why don't we do it after these messages?
¿Estás buscando la casa de tu sueño? Bienvenidos a Excellence Bienes Raíces, donde ofrecen un excelente servicio y garantizan el éxito de tu inversión. Permite que Excellence te guíe a la casa de tus sueños. Porque cuando se trata de encontrar un hogar perfecto, Excellence es la única opción. And we're back, and I'm excited for this segment because I want you to talk about Botánica del Barrio and a little bit about the goodies that you have for us today.
Definitely. So the Botánica del Barrio is loosely translated to the apothecary of the neighborhood or the community, and it's a mobile medicine rolling remedios to talk about how we can take care of ourselves for, by, and about the people. Our communities already have the information. For hundreds of plus years and thousands of years, we've connected and healed ourselves. And so it's just about validating that information for the abuelas or the migrante mujeres, maybe monolingual Spanish, who are like, no, pues tengo que ir a CVS, no? And I'm like, no, ustedes saben la información, how can we use it, no? Or for the young people who are like, that té works, that my grandmother or abuela always gives me, but I don't know how to make it. I don't know what's in it, but it makes it. And so the remedios that we have here, we have some of the basics, right? We have manzanilla or chamomile, which everybody knows. You can get that from the local coffee shop, to the Botánica, to 99-cent store. You can get manzanilla.
You can grow it?
You can grow it. A lot of community spaces and city areas don't have so much space, so we talk about being able to do it in pots, and not everybody, right, like has the land to do that. But yes, growing it. So a lot of these are how we can do it in urban settings and community settings. So the cart moves around in the city from a park to a corner street, and just talks about and shares teas and has these things that people start conversating about. So in front of us we have manzanilla. Most people know, like, what can you use that for, right? And it's 1 to 100 things oftentimes, each herb and plantita. So calming, relaxing, it's a nervine. Fussy babies, fussy people. Cooling off, right? Cooling off, eye compress, so many different things that you can use it for. And in this case, we usually use it for a calming tea. In the heat, in the summer, you can make calming popsicles, ice popsicles, right? Things like that. Iced tea we talk about, iced tea with lemonade, and a really calming one. And then we have things like roses. Everybody loves roses, and what do you usually connect with roses? Matters of the heart, right? And so roses, they're antiviral. They're also, you can do pain, but they're also spiritual herbalism, or herbalism that talks more about the spirit or the heart or other species, the emotions. Often talk about, roses and love, self-love, and other tradition. So in this case, this is, right, dried roses. You can do your own rose petals if you're doing it from home, of course, without pesticides, or those that are not with pesticides. So this is organic rose. This is in bulk. I keep this closed like this. And what you can do is, for a tincture, which is usually used in alcohol, you place it to the top and you cover it for 1 month, a full month, or full moon cycle. And then you strain it, and in the strain, what you would then have is usually, it would look something like this. So this is a small example. But
so after a month, this will help you?
Yeah, sure.
This is what it looks like.
This, you can just put the roses. This is a smaller version of it. In this case, I'm going to use one that is vegetable glycerin. This is for children, or for those who don't want to ingest alcohol, maybe sober or recovering, or for whatever reason. And you place it over. So this is what these are already, the roses with vegetable glycerin to the top, covering it, making sure that you cover it. This is an example of just a little bit of herbs in here, so people can see it a little better. And this is just a whole lot, right? Okay. And these are already maybe since, this is about 2 months, a month and a half of being in the vegetable glycerin. You can do usually 1 month, but you can do more than that. Once you strain them with the strainer or cheesecloth and all of that, you can put it in an amber bottle, and you'll have vegetable rose glycerite, which is good again for the heart, for calming, for emotions. You can do this with any herb.
But what do you do with this? You
would open it up.
Chew it.
So you open it up and you strain it. So what strain it? All the plantitas would come into like the strainer. Okay. And the juices or the liquid, you can go ahead and put in an amber bottle that covers it, similar to this, and you ingest it. And you can ingest it in just drops, a few drops. You can put it in your tea, in your té, in your coffee, or just literally to ingest it. You can put it on your hand and kind of clean it up like that, and it'll have that effect. So that's a glycerite. If you did it with alcohol, that's a tincture, and you can also have that, similar to that. And so roses are really connecting with a lot of people, as well as chamomile. These are examples of that. So I have these. These are actually some of the ones that we've made in a recent Oak Museum, at the Oakland Museum where the Botanica's at, and community members of a nonprofit and formerly incarcerated system impacted youth have
Let's talk about that, but we're going to conclude just right after our sponsors.
¿Están listos para algo nuevo? Descubre la alegría del baile con Prestige en Stevens Steakhouse. Ya seas principiante, intermedio o avanzado, Miguel y Jennifer te guiarán en cada paso del camino. Ven a bailar, reír y hacer nuevos amigos. Tu aventura comienza aquí. What is the reaction from people when they see you coming with this little cart? like, I'm here, my Botánica del Barrio. Like, what has been the reaction?
You know, people, ¿qué vendes? ¿Qué tienes?
No son elotes.
No, exactly, because it's yellow, right? It's this big yellow cart. And they're like, ¿qué tienes? ¿Qué vendes? Is the first question usually. And I'm like, no, es que no vendo. Ofrezco, quiero compartir. Aquí hay té, here's tea. Let's talk about, have you ever seen chamomile? And then they start, right? And the conversation starts, and I love to hear them moving and speaking about all their information and all the conversations that happen. So it's been really, really beautiful. I was able to work with Courage, which is an organization in Oakland, on a project called The Rose That Grew from Concrete, honoring Tupac Shakur, but also the idea of that resilience of our communities and formerly incarcerated and system impacted youth. And so I did a workshop with them, again, facilitating a talk about healing our heart for those communities. And they really took to the roses. You know, everybody was kind of like, what's this about? And then was like, woo, loving and eating chocolate, and everybody made their medicine. They made these, and these are on display. They're in the museum. So medicine is being made in the museum. And on the card that says the information, I say, share a song. Put, energy or Reiki or whatever it is your tradition, offer some love to that medicine, because that medicine is going to go to other communities and help heal their hearts or community and spaces. And so through that workshop, the community was able to be on display and share about their organization, but also make medicine and be artists and artivists in the museum now. And we're going to be making more medicine throughout the run of the show. And I encourage people to share songs, to share and take care of these songs. And so this is one of my hand drums. And the song I'm a part of that I'm going to share is called Viento, Agua, Tierra, Fuego, or Xicana. And it is part of our group in Lak Ech, which is the founding group of Mujeres de Maíz. So this would be what I consider or ask people to share over the cantos. And I oftentimes do this over the medicines or in other traditional spaces. Viento, agua, tierra, fuego. Viento, agua, tierra, fuego. Wind, water, land, fire. Wind, water, land, fire. Vente a mi lado. Vente a mi lado. Come to my side. Come to our side. So these songs are rituals, they're prayers, they're intentional spaces, and I encourage everybody to maybe see the exhibit or just on their own learn about some of their connections to their traditions and their ways.
Gracias. Wow.
It's been great having you here today. We've learned a lot, and certainly, one of the things I think that we can take from it, aparte de tus experiencias, es las enseñanzas que nos diste hoy. Mother Earth has blessed us with natural medicine or botánicas, como dices, para que nos curemos. So, apreciamos mucho que hayas compartido eso con nosotros.
Gracias.
Y también la espiritualidad es muy importante. No solo se encuentra en una religión, como muchos piensan, pero la espiritualidad, it comes and it stems from many different things, which is music, healing, danzas, and things like that. So, Faye, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
And we have a little gift for you.
We sure do.
Thank you.
As part of Gente Talk, we want to thank you very much, and we're going to give you a shirt.
Yay! Woohoo!
So everybody out there, share the podcast and follow us on Gente Talk Show on our social media. Every Tuesdays we have new content, so we're looking forward to having you on our podcast. Thank you once again. And one last question para las personas que nos están viendo y escuchando, unas palabras motivadoras de inspiración que puedas dar.
I think more than anything, to be yourself, find your community, and build for, by, and about the community.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Fe. Gracias for
Muchas
being here.
gracias. Su servidor Jorge La Voz.
And Dr. Lonnie.
Hasta la próxima.
Gracias.
Be sure to follow us and subscribe.
This is going to be a ride you won't want to miss.